All right. Hi, Megan.
Hi, Sarah.
How are you? I'm so happy you were able to come on today.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. It's fun.
Yes. So, for those of you who don't know, this is Maegan Hodge, and she is my personal acupuncturist. I've worked with her off and on for years, and she's the founder of Centered Richmond Acupuncture and Wellness here in Richmond, Virginia. So, I am so excited to bring her on. And it's so funny, we had to reschedule this interview due to weather last week, but that same exact day, I had a friend, and she texted me and she said, I know that you go to acupuncture and that you really love your acupuncturist. So what is the name and how can I get an appointment with her? And I was like, that is
Oh,
so crazy that you texted me today of all days about this. So
funny.
I can't wait to share all of this good information.
Oh, yeah.
So with that, if you could just start out and kind of tell us about your background and story and how you got to where you are.
Yeah, sure. Well, when I was growing up, I was really interested in the sciences and really saw my career going somewhere in an orientation towards helping people. And then I thought it was going to be counseling or psychiatry or something in that vein. And so when I was at UVA, I studied psychology, and for quite a while afterwards, really had I had downloaded the application to apply to the Master's of Counseling program. I started taking some pre-med classes. I couldn't really quite decide what direction I wanted to go in, but I, going in that direction just lacked something for me. I could never quite pull the trigger on it. And I knew I was looking for something that felt and sounded like helping people in a way that felt a little bigger to me, a little more, I didn't really have the terms for it at the time, but I was looking for something that was a little more holistic, a tool for helping people that let me integrate all the things that were going on in their lives, all the issues they were having, whether it was pain or digestion or emotional stuff. I think talk therapy is amazing. I think it can be an amazing and profound tool, but I knew I wanted something just a little different than that. So I stumbled into this kind of by accident. Somebody loaned me a book, and it was about Chinese medicine dietary therapy, which sounds so dry and so boring. But I started paging through the book, and it sounded interesting. And before I knew it, I was reading this book like it was a novel, which was so strange to me in retrospect. And I couldn't get enough. And I had some little health things going on, some digestion stuff, some allergies, and just started playing around with it. And I just found it to be so enormously helpful that my life started to pick up in a different direction at that point. And then it was just, things just kind of happened. And within like 8 months or a year or something, had moved to Oregon and was studying Chinese medicine, and it just all happened kind of fast.
Wow. So that kind of pivot point where you were studying psychology and you knew you wanted to help people, and it sounded to me as if you wanted to get more onto a holistic path, obviously, with medicine and health. Like, had you heard of that, prior or growing up, or was it just kind of like this intuitive knowing that, you wanted to kind of enter that realm more than the traditional?
It was maybe a little bit of both. I had heard of acupuncture. I don't remember the first time that I heard about it, maybe sometime during college. I had a Qigong practice, which is kind of like a traditional Chinese meditation movement practice, sort of like a cousin of yoga. And I think I had heard of it there for the first time. And I thought going to acupuncture was kind of like going to a trade school, like massage or something like that. And nothing wrong with that. But what I knew of it, I didn't know that it could be so involved and so in depth and so thorough in helping patients with certain issues. And I remember around the time I graduated from UVA, I heard a friend was thinking of going to acupuncture school. And I was so ignorant at that point about it. So this was 2003. I literally said to my friend who told me about it, "Oh, what a weirdo, who does that?" So that moment in retrospect to me is pretty hilarious now, and never say never, I guess. But yeah, something changed over the few years after that. And by 2006, I was in Oregon.
Yeah. Well, speaking of, I mean, and kind of reading about your background on your website, I mean, you're pretty honest about how, you grew up in an area in Virginia and you grew up in a family where this might have been perceived as kind of quacky, right?
Yeah.
So that to me, it's not, I feel as if wasn't super weird that you had that reaction at first just because of the background
Yeah.
piece. But when you decided to kind of pursue this path, how did your family take it? Or what was the
Um,
reactions from other people, and how did you overcome that?
yeah. I mean, by that point in my life, I was well into adulthood, and I think it's important to take care with the types of people you surround yourself with. And so I had really cultivated relationships with lots of people that were hugely supportive and thought it was going to be a fantastic idea and were really encouraging. And my family was supportive too. My dad's biggest concern was actually more financial. He really wanted me to go to business school and set myself up for solid financial ground, which is really wonderful. And I
I
really
can relate.
yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So really at that point in my life, I wasn't living in Franklin County anymore. And tons of people there think it's so cool and so great, but also there's a very, there's a very Christian community that sometimes, has strong feelings about things like yoga or, sort of
Mm-hmm.
new wave or new age types of things.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but it was pretty good. It was pretty smooth.
Yeah. And look at you now, right? You've built an amazing business and you are a business person, but you're doing what kind of aligns with you and your passion and this. So it's kind of the best of both worlds, I would say.
I think so.
So, I mean, talking about psychology and what you studied for a good portion of college, I mean, do you feel as if that interest and that knowledge comes in handy now? Because, I feel as if mental health is obviously getting more, I don't want to say mainstream, but it's getting to be more included in holistic health practices, right? And when I walk into your office, like there's a good 15-20 minutes where I almost feel like you're my therapist and I get to kind of like talk to you because especially with something like acupuncture, right? And I'm a yoga teacher, I've gone through training and I firmly believe that we hold stuff in our bodies. And so you can't separate the two. Do you find yourself kind of like falling on that to kind of help your clients?
I would say less as time goes by. I'm not a registered counselor.
Mm-hmm.
I think what I just try to do that feels so different for patients is to simply listen when they have things they feel like they need to share. And I try to keep any advice to, strictly medical. With some people, the conversation gets a little more personal and I can offer personal advice, as needed. Um, but the background in psychology has really helped me to be more aware of mental health issues and spot things going on with mental health that the patient may or may not be aware of themselves. I think anxiety is incredibly common and increasingly common in the type of world that we live in with all the stimulation and demands and stress and having to schlep the kids around and whatever. And a lot of people that come into my practice don't necessarily identify that they have anxiety, but I can tell that they have anxiety by the number of questions they ask, how they sit in their chair.
Mm-hmm.
Just, it's given me good footing to sort of pay attention and fill some gaps or, make some suggestions based on what might be going on with them. And, I'm not officially diagnosing patients with, any diseases or whatever, but you can just, it's helped me to be more intuitive and in tune with what's going on in folks' lives.
Yeah. And I'm sure, just over the years and just being the sensitive person that you are, you're probably really good at reading energy of people.
I think I try to stay away from the energy word simply because I think of myself as an acupuncturist for normal people. I really enjoy making it accessible to people in conversation in a way that might feel inaccessible otherwise. I like to use really simple language that people understand and can relate to, whether that's the language of Western medicine or just, whatever language they're talking to me about. I think it's I would say one of my best qualities as a healthcare provider is I try to meet you where you're at and try to talk to you in a language that you can understand. And I have nothing against like talking about energy in my personal life. I think it's cool and fun to talk about energy or whatever,
Yeah.
but I would say I'm very intuitive, and I'm very in tune to what's going on with
Yes.
people. I'm sure you've noticed. I just try to pay attention and listen, and yeah, I like listening.
Yeah. Do you ever offer suggestions to like other kind of modalities of holistic health, whether that be meditation, diet, exercise, what have you?
Yes, of course. I try. So often by the time people come to me, people can be quite in pain, or, have really severe symptoms. The acupuncturist is often the last resort for most people. So I try to at first keep things very simple. I'll often recommend a regimen of acupuncture, or acupuncture and Chinese herbs, depending on what the problem is, and give it a little time and just see what's going on. I don't like to pile on and pile on and pile on, but if a patient asks me a question, oh, do you think meditation might be good? I'll tell a personal story as to how it was helpful for me, and give them some pointers. Or people ask me, what do you think about yoga? Or all kinds of things come up in conversation, and I do absolutely love sending people to providers or into practices that I think that are going to be, give them even better results for whatever goal they have.
Yes, absolutely. And I would imagine that, that if someone is coming to you for acupuncture, it seems as if they're very open to exploring other areas of holistic health too. So I'm sure that they can appreciate your recommendations.
Yeah.
And I want to get into kind of more of the acupuncture herbs and how exactly it works in a little bit, but I want to back up really quickly to that nutrition book that you read that kind of put you more permanently on this path. And so it was called Healing with Whole Foods.
Yes.
Right. And I think I've seen it in your office before. And I remember being drawn to it. And I think I picked it up one day and I was like, oh, this looks heavy. But obviously with a passion in nutrition, I love learning about all that stuff. And so that is something, nutrition and Chinese medicine is something I'm less familiar with. So I'm just curious, kind of, what were the main tenets in that book? And is it something that you still adhere to, or has your kind of personal nutrition and views on diet evolved over the years?
Oh, gosh. Yes. I mean, I think for most people, that kind of stuff is always evolving, right? That book has a very sort of strict vegan bent, which I think isn't really an angle that works well for many people and many body types and many climates. So I'll say that about it, but it's kind of teaching a whole system of dietary therapy. So it's not advocating one thing versus another. It's giving you tools to sort of identify what your body might be needing based on where it falls in these sort of this pattern diagnosis that Chinese medicine does. If your problem is here, you might be having these symptoms, and you can you can introduce more of these foods and eat less of these foods. Mm-hmm. And it's not really rigorous or dogmatic. It just gives you some guidance for, healing yourself, which I think is something that we don't really have a language for in Western medicine with diet. There's so many diets, but we don't understand on a deep level what they do. Most of them are about losing weight or, something kind of along that, or having beautiful skin. And there's nothing wrong with that. But some people have medical problems. They need something to, heal a digestive problem or treat their pain. Or so if you're somebody with medical problems, an approach like that can be helpful, but it can also be confusing because the language is written in the language of another culture. It's right and feel really out of context for a lot of American folks. So I don't really refer out of the book or whatever, but I definitely can use some of the basic principles to help folks.
Yeah, for sure. I actually think about you and then cringe when I drink a smoothie in the wintertime. Because sometimes I just want a smoothie and it's cold outside and I know my stomach is going to hate me for this. And Maegan would slap my wrist, but sorry.
Well, I'll tell you, I had some ice cream last night and, it's February and I think sometimes you just got to live a little or whatever.
For sure. And, it's not lost on me that you probably had ice cream on the first day that was like 68 degrees. So maybe.
Oh, well, I had ice cream earlier in the week too, just so you don't think I'm living some pristine life or whatever. I'm not.
Oh, that's great. So can I ask how you personally eat or what kind of nutritional philosophy you adhere to?
Yeah, I mean, I think I just kind of eat whatever I feel like eating at this point in my
Mm,
life. I think when
mhm,
I was younger, for whatever reason, I was not in a body that felt good, which I think was part of what sent me on this journey of finding answers of how to make myself feel better and by extension help other people learn how to feel better in their bodies. So I feel like I've sort of all been there, done that. I feel great every day now. I wake up with good energy, I have good digestion, I have great sleep. There's nothing really, there's no reason for me to feel like I need to be hyper focused on what I eat. That being said, I try to eat plenty of vegetables. I cook a lot of food at home with my husband. But I have red wine and I
mhm.
like pizza and but with no cheese because I'm pretty lactose intolerant. But I don't think too much about it. I just eat what looks good. I try to get good quality ingredients and eat plenty of vegetables and that's kind of it.
Yeah. And I mean, based on what I see kind of on your social media, I mean, you definitely value good, healthy, real food.
Yeah.
I think that when you kind of let go of the anxiety and fear around things that might be considered less nutritious, your body is in more of a parasympathetic nervous state where it can process things a lot easier. So, I mean, it's more about that balanced approach.
Yeah. And I think the giving yourself permission to eat things that you want, not, and I'm not talking about binging or, eating a whole
Mhm.
cake or whatever, but giving yourself treats or, little things that taste good, it helps prevent a lot of anxiety and a lot of fear. I had a patient who recently, said, I've been so good about sugar for so long, I hadn't had any. And then, yesterday I ate half of a king cake. And I said, listen,
Mhm.
like have some sweets sometimes. It's okay. You're not really going to harm yourself if you let yourself have like a little treat, a little sweet at the end of the day, and if that helps you, get out of that place where you feel like occasionally you need to eat a whole cake, that's probably a lot healthier for you and a lot better for just, feeling good in your body every day than trying to really strictly avoid it when you have really strong cravings for sugar. Just let yourself have a little.
Absolutely.
It's not going to kill you.
Yeah, absolutely. And with my health coaching clients, I tell them, like, I want you, like, right from the get go, to give yourself permission to eat whatever you want. And they look at me like I have three heads. But when you kind of, because the response then is, if I give myself permission to have whatever I want, I'll fly off the rails. And obviously there's some coaching on that side of things and
Yeah.
disentangling the emotional attachment to food and stuff like that. But think about the way the human brain works. We tell ourselves we can't have something and we're going to want it even more.
Yeah.
And the human brain, like, when there's that gap there, like, I mean, based on neuroscience, there's this phenomenon called information gap theory. I mean, just out of curiosity alone, whether it's subconscious or conscious, we're going to try and eventually we're going to break. But
Yeah.
also just think about, like, when someone's like, don't push the red button, what do you want to do? You want to push the red button. So it's, yeah, there's like this no need for this like anxious white knuckling of it if you can kind of give yourself permission. But at the end of the day, let's say someone was in a little bit of a more a mindset around food where they felt a little bit more control and they were valuing good nutrition, and then you said, you can have half that king cake, but do you want to? Right. And then they were able to consciously make a decision where, like, actually, no, I don't, because I'm feeling so good and blah, 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 blah. So when you can start from a place of permission first, I feel as if exactly what you're saying, people can practice more balance and moderation.
Yeah. And I think one of the cool things about acupuncture, sort of one of the side effects of it, is that it helps going through a process working with an acupuncturist often helps get you in touch with how you feel when you do things.
Mhm.
And I think that's really important with diet. Pay attention to how you feel after you ate something. Did you feel good? Did you feel not so good? And if you felt good, maybe do more of that. And if you felt terrible after eating, figure out why. Was it that it was fried? Was it that you ate too much? Was it, what? I think you can feel good after you eat if you just start paying a little bit of attention. And nobody teaches
Exactly.
that. Nobody says pay attention to how you feel after you eat.
Right, right. No, and the body awareness and being in tune to your body, but also working with your body. Like I feel like in our culture as women, we're almost taught that this body's not only like a separate thing, but that it's something negative that we should be berating day in and day out and picking
Yeah.
ourselves apart in the mirror. And like when you can understand that you need to be working with your body like in this beautiful symbiotic relationship, then you know, it's a lot easier to pursue health goals and achieve health goals from a place of self-love than negativity.
Yeah.
And I think
Oh,
that,
sorry. Go ahead. There's a little
oh, I
gap.
was going to say, and I think acupuncture seems to be one of those ways that to get you more in tune with your body.
Yeah. And I think even that's all so important. And I try to think about what's the point when I do something, why do this? What's the value in it? And I think the value in investing in yourself, time wise, money wise, effort wise, whatever, why do all this stuff? I think none of it matters if you can't give yourself permission to enjoy your life, and so many
Mm-hmm.
people come to me because they're in such a desperate place, especially chronic pain patients. They aren't enjoying their life anymore and they miss the things that they used to enjoy, and they so want to get back to that. And it's one thing to have it taken away from you and realize that you miss it, that the enjoyment
Mm-hmm.
of life. But if you haven't sort of been at that deep dark place, and you're just a younger woman who has all these like really conflicting messages about what to eat and why and how you're supposed to look, what even is the point of all that self torture if you're not enjoying your life? Like I try to not put people on really restrictive diets. See, a lot of patients come in, they're like, what are you going to tell me that I can't eat? And I'm like, nothing. I'm not going to tell you can't eat anything, because it's so important that you enjoy your life. That's what I want to help you do. I want to help you get back to a place where you can enjoy your life again. I think that's
Yes, exactly.
liberating.
For sure. And I love that. And I think, getting really down to your intention about why you're even pursuing good health in the first place. Like it's really just about the way that you want to feel. Like
Yeah.
so many people attach it to the number on the scale or, clear skin or what have you. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. We all deserve to feel good physically in our bodies. But at the end of the day, we kind of just want to feel free and at peace and living a joyful life. And so if the route to getting those health goals is, laced with anxiety and fear and stress, well, you can come out the other side and get the number on the scale and the clear skin or what have you. And it's no guarantee if you haven't done the inner work, right, that you're going to feel any better on the other side of that.
Yeah. And, if you are in a
So, yeah.
place of fear, stress, or anxiety, absolutely everybody's welcome here. It's a totally fine place to start. But I just like to, I don't know. I think about what I do, and the phrase that always comes to mind is I enjoy watching the light come back into people's eyes. Like that's what I want to do.
I love that. Yeah.
It's cool.
So that is a perfect segue to talking a little bit more about acupuncture and just kind of getting a little bit deeper into how it works. I mean, just kind of based on what I know and reading on your website, it's used to treat so many issues, ailments, and illnesses from physical to emotional. So can you talk a little bit more about how that works, especially when it comes to things like physical pain, and then more of the emotional stuff?
Yeah. I think there's a huge body of research that is starting to amass about acupuncture that barely existed 10 years ago. And I honestly, I don't really stay up on it. I have some very basic sense of how acupuncture works that I can help you with. But if anybody's curious, go search PubMed. There's so much stuff now. Um, what I will say is with pain, I think the explanation is pretty simple. A lot of chronic pain I find is from soft tissue dysregulation, which basically means tight muscles or tight connective tissue. And with needles, you can get into places that you can't easily with hands during massage or rolfing or whatever, and you can really quickly and efficiently reset some of these tension patterns that are in the body, and over time retrain tension patterns out of the body. So if somebody has TMJ, they've got chronic jaw pain, I will put needles near the ends of the motor neurons and the muscles to essentially reset them. And often the muscle will kind of twitch or spasm, or sometimes I'll use a little TENS unit, which uses just a tiny little bit of electricity to kind of stimulate that. Sometimes when people get whiplash, the connective tissue is just really hard and frozen, and you can just sort of go in with little teeny tiny needles and just talk to the connective tissue, and it will start sort of wakening up and softening and moving. And there was something I saw a long time ago that was looking at how these little control centers in the connective tissue, like 3 inches away from an acupuncture needle, were like moving and responding and changing the laxity in the connective tissue, which I just thought was so cool. It's like little almost pain-free little microsurgeries or something. So with the way it works for pain, I totally get it. My science background totally gets it. When it comes to emotional stuff, I feel like it's more mysterious not in a one day we won't get it kind of way, but I feel like the science just isn't right there. And honestly, we so rarely understand how and why a pharmaceutical works. Like nobody knows why Prozac works, or maybe that's a bad example. I think we do know why Prozac works, but there are a lot of pharmaceuticals we don't really understand how or why they work. We just know that they do, and that's good enough most of the time. And maybe it's partially placebo, but I think ultimately with emotional stuff, it kind of boils down to there's that parable about what wolf that do you feed, and do you want to feed stress and anxiety and fear, or do you want to feed calm and feelings of positivity? And just doing something like meditation is just teaching your brain something new. I think acupuncture can be very similar. You're giving your brain and your body the experience of relax and calm or pain reduction or whatever. And the more you repeat that experience, the more it's going to stick with you, the more you're going to form these new neurological pathways that stay with you over time. So it could be more complex than that. I don't know, but I know at the very least that's happening with people where they're forming new neural pathways. I'm bringing them into this very controlled environment where things are very calm and a very specific way. The music is a very specific way. The furniture is a very specific way. And, we talk in a very specific way, and, try to keep things very calm. And so from the minute somebody's walking in the door, the treatment's already started. So just retraining people's brains, I guess.
Yeah, no, I love that. And you're so right. Your environment is so calming. And I try, and for that reason, whenever I see you, schedule it towards the end of the day, because it's almost like this boundary from kind of, the work stress to like, I walk in, it's almost just this like sigh of relief. So, kudos to you to creating that amazing environment.
Yeah, I had some help. Nicole Rutledge, who is a local interior designer, helped me with a lot of the stuff that we have here.
So cool. So you also work a lot with Chinese herbs, yes, right? So can you talk a little bit about how that works and kind of how it works with acupuncture and by itself?
Yeah. So the practice of Chinese medicine is a full medical system that goes beyond acupuncture alone. There's, movement therapy, there's dietary therapy, there's acupuncture, there's Chinese herbs, and I don't know, there's a fifth pillar or something I'm forgetting because I just kind of do a couple of those. So I think acupuncture is really cool. It's not a magic bullet. It's not going to solve everybody's problems. Acupuncture is great for, I'm going to really kind of dumb it down. Acupuncture is good for kind of moving stuff around in a system. But, if somebody has a nutritional deficiency or their diet's been off, acupuncture is not going to really do anything to correct that, right? Like it's not a magical thing. It's not going to put energy, or, vitamins or minerals into your deficient system or whatever, or help clear out an overgrowth of bacteria in your gut, or whatever, that kind of thing. So that's more internal medicine stuff. And to fix things on the inside of the body, you usually need to put things inside the body. So Chinese herbs are the system that I learned, along with dietary stuff, that's the most efficient and effective for that. So when patients come in with internal medicine problems, and I often include mental health in that, I'll typically include Chinese herbs with the treatment plans that I give people, because it works so much faster than acupuncture alone for stuff like that.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I've been on both. And so I can personally attest to their effectiveness for sure. So do you have any clients, just one example that you could think of that, has had a major breakthrough or changes when working with you, whether that was acupuncture alone or both with the herbs? Is there anything that comes to mind?
Oh, well, I mean, I'm tempted to say, yeah, of course, every day, but what do you mean when you say that? What's a major
Let's say
breakthrough?
someone, like, I remember, like, my best friend's dad had a really bad knee injury, and she always talks about how acupuncture was the one thing that basically healed his knee. Um, and now it's normal. Like, I remember him like on crutches and like limping around, and like nothing was working, physical therapy, stuff like that. But then he went to acupuncture and it was like, bam, done. So like, whether it's like on the physical pain side or like digestive issues, or maybe you worked with someone who was struggling with infertility and got pregnant or something like that. I'm not saying that again is like the magic bullet, but just didn't know if you had anyone from your experience that kind of came to mind.
Yeah. Like, are you looking for like you want me to tell like a story about somebody, or you're just looking
Yeah.
for, like,
Yeah. If you have one.
Okay. Well, I have to be careful because I have to protect patients'
Of course.
privacy. So
Obviously.
give me a second to think about
Yeah.
um, something. I think what comes to mind is, you know, if a doctor or something is listening to this, they're going to think I'm insane, but I love treating chronic pain because the results are so good and so consistent that, to me, it's almost in the most wonderful way possible. Like, it's almost boring seeing chronic pain patients. I'm like, oh yeah, I got you. I can't help everything. Like, if you have a
Yeah.
bone spur, or something wrong with your bones, like, that's a lot harder, but most stuff is soft tissue and easy, fine. But I'll get patients sometimes who I feel like I kind of get the sense that they're about to kind of go on a little bit of a wild ride in their life. Like this, that maybe this, I'll get a patient every few months like this, where they're on the cusp of realizing that they need to change a lot of things that are going on in their lives, but they haven't really had like the time or the presence of mind to figure that out for themselves yet. So, sometimes I'll get people that are just totally miserable, and they'll talk about their totally miserable job. And I'm just like, yeah, I think by the time, I'm not going to tell you this, but I think by the time you're done, you're going to start feeling so much better that you're no longer going to be able to tolerate the toxic job that you're stuck in or whatever. And, so it's really fun to watch people take stock of what's not bringing them joy in their lives, or, just bringing them like lots of yucky toxicity or whatever, and see them start to realize that they deserve better than that, that they deserve to have a life that makes them feel good. And the light starts to come back into their eyes, and they start to remember, or maybe experience for the first time, what that's supposed to feel like. So, they'll quit the job, they'll get a new job, and, be some crazy circumstance, like so-and-so on LinkedIn, messaged me out of the blue, and I got this amazing job offer, and I'm going to take it. Or they, decide to go to counseling with their spouse that they've been avoiding for forever, or they start to realize that their problems with their spouse aren't all their fault, and they stop taking like total ownership and blame. Or it can manifest a million different ways, but it's really fun when people come on that level, and they are reviewing everything that goes on in their lives, and just, it's fun to see people decide to design a better life for themselves. I think that's really cool. So I don't think that's really anything directly about what I do, other than I just give them a taste of feeling good, and they decide to totally claim ownership of that. It's really neat.
For sure. And I completely believe in that, and how what you focus on, grows. So I think that when you can kind of start a journey of wanting to feel good, and then you realize that there's this major area in your life that makes you feel the exact opposite, you kind of then embark on this journey, if you will, to just feel better in other areas of life.
Yeah. And I will say, just in a completely different, more like medical complaint kind of
Hmm.
realm, it's really fun watching women who have had really horrible, like horrific murder scene periods their entire life,
Mm-hmm.
or really painful periods, or get really bad migraines around their periods forever. They just, they don't even know that something else is possible, and see them have a period where they're like, wow, that actually wasn't that bad. I'm like,
Yeah.
that's what it's supposed to be
Yeah.
like.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. And I'm sure so many people listening who suffer from that will kind of appreciate it, and maybe be inspired to explore acupuncture for themselves, because I've heard very similar stories. Um, so, what are some of kind of like the myths and fears about acupuncture, or, kind of what you do in general?
Hmm. Myths. Well, 10 years ago when I started, it was more like, does it really work? I hear less and less of that. I think it's becoming
Hmm.
more and more mainstream, which I'm so excited about. Um, the questions that I get these days are more like, does it hurt? Or a fear around the needles, which is
Yeah.
understandable. Our experience with needles in Western medicine is these huge injection needles, and they're really painful. And I'm not really a big fan of needles. So it's another kind of a funny reason that
Yeah.
these needles are structurally so incredibly different. They're more like, they're more like like the size of them is more like a coarse hair, as opposed to what we think of as this really stiff, heavy, big gauge needle. So even some of the most extreme needle phobic people are always really surprised at how the needles feel is so different. Then the people that are true needle phobes really prefer to call them pins instead of needles, which I'm totally fine with.
Yeah.
Um,
Because they are very small, like a pin.
Yes, like little and thin. And so that's probably one of the biggest misconceptions, is that, getting jabbed with a bunch of needles is just going to be this really, painful, uncomfortable thing. And, it feels like, you feel like a little teeny tiny poke, but it's, people fall asleep afterwards. If it were some bad, horrific thing, like, you'd be on the edge of your seat or whatever.
Right.
That's
Right.
probably the biggest one
Yeah.
I see these days.
Yeah.
Sometimes people will
Yeah.
ask me, like, do you reuse the needles? Like, good God, no. No, they go
Yeah.
to the sharps disposal bin. They get shipped off to whatever medical facility deals with that stuff, and one and done, sterile, single use.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yes. Yeah. So
And it's
want
a
to make
good
it very
question to ask, like, no shame to anybody that has that question, but
right.
absolutely not.
Absolutely not. Yeah. So now there's nothing to be afraid of, and you shouldn't have resistance about acupuncture. So kind of going off on a separate tangent for a second, just selfishly, and because we talk a lot about sleep hygiene
Yeah.
on Healthified, can you talk about acupuncture and sleep issues? And also along those lines, like, and I think I've talked to you about this before. I've suffered from sleep issues for years, and especially like I've gone through bouts of insomnia, and I wake up every single night between 4 and 4:30. Like it's like on the dot. And so I have a friend who is in Chinese medicine. She's on the West Coast, but she would, tell me that like, oh, waking up between 4 and 6 is connected to your lungs. And that's connected to like sadness and grief, according to Chinese medicine. And I'm like, but I'm not sad. Like I don't, and my lung capacity is pretty great. Like I've never had, asthma or anything like that. So I guess two parts to my question: acupuncture and sleep, and how can it help? And is there that connection in Chinese medicine about sleep issues and like organ, um, how it relates to different organs?
Sure. So with most sleep patients, my personal preference is to do acupuncture and herbs, because often
Okay.
there's, something else going on. It's not, sleep's complicated,
Mm-hmm.
blood sugar, hormones, stress all feeds into it. So I like to do a real well-rounded approach, and then ask things about, when was your last meal, and, did it have plenty of protein, and
Mm.
stuff like that. I think it can be a friggin' game changer for sleep. And that's the way I know how to treat it best. What the second part of your question was, what was it?
About like the organs in the
Oh,
body
yeah,
and
yeah,
how like waking up at like 4 a.m. Have you
yeah.
heard that? I'm sure
Oh,
you.
yeah,
Okay.
of course.
Huh.
There's Chinese medicine diagnosis is all about patterns. And so it's easy to take, and like this, your friend was just chit chatting with you, and like, yes, she's right. It can be associated with that. But in like a real like patient relationship, you tend to not like take a single symptom out of context. You're looking for groupings of symptoms. So a lot of
Mm,
patients will have, you know, I don't know, let's say you're doing a really simple diagnosis based on 5-element or something. Most people will have some symptoms in each of the 5 things that you could be picking from. So you look for the largest grouping. So yeah, you might have this one symptom that's related to lungs or metal or, you know, whatever, this Chinese language kind of medicine stuff that most people aren't going to understand. But
yeah.
you look for patterns and you ask the patient a bunch of questions, or you have them fill out a big intake form. And so you're looking for patterns essentially. And so, yeah, you've got this one funky symptom, but nothing else matches. So in a real provider environment, they would just kind of be like, oh, well, pass, you know, we'll put a pin on that. It'll probably resolve on its own if we figure out what's really going on underneath that. So that's a branch and you're looking for the root.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. So acupuncture and herbs for sleep issues. Check. I need to come back to you. But along those lines, I am actually pregnant right now. So can pregnant women do acupuncture and herbs or?
Theoretically, yes. I almost never give pregnant women herbs just because,
Gotcha. Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
it's
Makes
always
sense.
an abundance of caution is
Right.
prudent.
Okay.
And I just didn't get great training in that. It's not that
Yeah.
you can't, or if your
Mhm.
acupuncturist is giving you herbs while you're pregnant, that it's bad. Like, absolutely not. That's just my thing.
Yeah. But pregnant women can do acupuncture.
Oh, yes. Oh, my God.
Okay. Okay.
Got
Good to
morning
know.
sickness? Come see me.
Yeah. Okay. Got it.
Congratulations, by the way. That's amazing.
Oh, thank you. Yes, we're very excited. All right. So shifting gears a little bit. So what I want to know is, you obviously seem like you're a wealth of knowledge and you've probably learned so much about health in the body. What are you learning about now? What is exciting you now
Oh my
these
God.
days?
It's super nerdy. It's very
I love it.
not
The
related
nerdier, the
to
better.
Chinese medicine at all. I went to grad school in 2006. I have been practicing for almost 10 over 10 years if you count my last year at school where you're treating patients, but just like under the supervision of a doctor. So at this point in my career, like I feel like I've pretty well got it down. You know, I come to work, I treat people, and I go home. And it's been a funny time to try to have new hobbies because of the pandemic. So I got really interested in learning about investing about a year ago. And so I've just been
Ooh.
kind of dabbling there, kind of more of like my science and math brain, which really gets no play at work.
Yeah.
And you know, I love to cook. That's probably my biggest hobby. So I'm always, you know, trying to find new recipes or ingredients or, you know, things and like that. And yeah, that's probably been, you know, what I've been learning about the most lately.
Yeah. What's your favorite thing to cook?
What is my favorite thing to cook? Something new is my favorite thing to cook. I always love something new. But I will say that probably my like signature dish is something I call wine chicken.
Cool.
So,
Writing that one
I
down.
will give you the recipe because it is super simple. Basically, you take whatever cut of chicken that you want, but it needs to be bone in. So we like thighs. You dredge it in egg, and then you dredge it in flour, and you just sear it in the pan, both sides, get it nice and brown. And then so like sometimes I'll do a whole chicken and I'll have to do a couple of rounds of searing, and I'll have like a pile of, you know, breaded chicken, you know, in olive oil, nothing like, we're not like talking like deep fry or whatever. You're just browning it. And so it gets this nice crust, and you put all the pieces of chicken back in the pan, and you pour, I do like a kind of a sharp olive oil. We're not talking about like deep frying or anything like that. You're just browning basically. Then I'll have the pieces aside and I'll bring them back in the pan when they're all done, and I'll get like a really nice kind of sharp, acidic, bright Sauvignon Blanc and pour it, maybe like a third of the way up the chicken, just enough to keep it moist while you cook it. So then you put the lid on, and I cook it for about 45 minutes on the stove, low heat, like medium low. On my stove, it's like a 3 instead of it goes up to a 9. And then it's like a little crisp at the top, and a little bit of breading, but not like an insane amount. And it's just like really tender, fall apart. Salt and pepper, of course, don't forget that. And over
Right,
some
exactly.
rice, chicken and rice, classic dish. That's just something I kind of made up one day, and everybody seems to love it.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. You made that up. I was like, oh, I should link a recipe on the interwebs too. But it sounds like that sounds so good. Sounds so good. Fried chicken.
Yeah.
Yeah. So speaking of the pandemic, I just want to quickly talk about COVID. And, obviously this is weaved its way through all of the interviews that I've done. Did it impact your business, and how did it affect you? And how did you did you notice a difference in the things people were coming to see you for?
Oh yeah, good questions. Yeah, I mean, business really dropped off about a year ago. We were just slammed busy in mid-March, and then when the stay-at-home order came, it was just like crickets. I had about 20 people that were coming once a week, and back then, I'm sure you remember, we didn't really know much about the virus or how easily transmissible it was. And I had started to hear about it in mid-January. So I had been very aware of what was happening, and I was pretty sure I was crunching numbers. I was like, putting in cases in an exponential calculator and going like, oh gosh, there's like almost no way that this isn't coming for us. So I was prepared sort of. I hired an old friend of mine who is a really amazing PhD infectious disease epidemiologist who does consultations with businesses. So we consulted. She lives in France now, actually, so it was over Zoom. I sent her a video of the clinic, what everything looked like, and she just gave me a to-do list. She was like, do this, get rid of this, the blankets have to go, the water tank has to go, hand sanitizer here, hand sanitizer there, what's going on with your HVAC unit. She just walked me through everything. It was amazing. So I had everything set up, and so that felt really good. And I kept the patient load really low for a while, months, until just we had a sense of what was going on. I just wanted everybody to be super safe. I didn't want to, give anybody any unnecessary risk. I felt really good about being here. My staff felt really good about being here. So that was a pretty good barometer. But we just did a ton of stuff. But a lot of acupuncturist office, they didn't have that resource. They were closing down. People will stay closed for months. It was a really mixed bag. And then you asked me about that.
Did you notice a change in the?
Yes, that's been crazy, actually. So you see patterns in populations. I think on an individual level, we are super different, but a lot of us do the same stuff. We work, we go out to eat at the end of the day because we're tired. We sit in our office chairs a lot, or our school chair or whatever. There's a lot of sitting and a lot of eating at restaurants in Richmond in general, right? And a lot of drinking beer at breweries and, having fun on the weekends.
Fun. Yeah.
So the root, we were talking about roots and branches. The root of what I was seeing with a lot of people before the pandemic was basically just gut dysbiosis, sort of running rampant and causing lots of inflammation in the body. And when the pandemic started, it completely went away. I was seeing these really thick tongue coatings. The tongue coating is literally gut bacteria in the mouth. And so a thick tongue coating is literally an overgrowth of gut bacteria coming into the mouth. And that all disappeared on most people. And also you can kind of look at the tongue, the size of the tongue as an earlier indication of inflammation in the body or water retention. And people's tongues started shrinking. It was wild. So all this gut dysbiosis stuff from, having too much fun on the weekends basically started to go away. And what started to happen was, the words don't matter. In Chinese medicine, we call it liver qi stagnation. But basically, it started to be patterns of people having problems, predictable problems from sitting around too much, because we're all stuck in our houses, right? And like working at weird like workstations at home that really weren't ergonomic or whatever. So it was pain and people just feeling like really restless and grumpy and stuck and just kind of like, we think of it as just getting stir crazy, but all this
Right.
physical symptoms can come with it. And so that's what it turned into. And it's kind of stayed that way. It's gotten a little better, I think, for some people, but it's been really fascinating to see how it's changed.
I know. I don't know if people can know right now, but my eyes are like, I'm like wide. I'm like, this is very fascinating. Um, yeah, because I mean, that makes sense hearing you say that, but I just feel as if no one would really think about that. That's how that would impact people.
I never would have, except I was just seeing it. I was like, what is happening? I have probably, I don't know, let's say 4 or 5 formulas that I use the most consistently, because a lot of us have the same health problems, or like the roots are the same. And the formula's completely changed. Like it's a completely different 5 formulas that I'm using over and over again. And I'll get weird cases where somebody needs some really special thing or whatever. Of course, like it's not literally the same thing for everybody, but
Mhm.
the trends have absolutely changed.
Yeah.
It's been cool.
Yeah. And the whole liver health thing, I've written published a couple articles about liver health on Healthified, and that always fascinates me too. And speaking of, like, with regards to how you say you use the tongue to detect different things, I remember coming into your office the first time for our first session, and you took my pulse.
Mhm.
And you, after like 5 seconds, were like, "Oh, have you had mono?" And I was like, "Well, as a matter of fact, I have." Like, are you a mind reader? What is going on? Can you just? I just think, just for my own personal interest, how do you do that?
How do I do that? Well, I just learned from somebody who learned from somebody who learned from somebody. I learned from a lot of somebody's, truthfully. But if you think about it, the best way I've been able to make sense of it is that if you look at physics and you look at the study of fluid dynamics, fluid moving in a closed system, if something changes in that system, it changes the way the fluid is moving everywhere. And so basically all pulse reading is without realizing that it was that, it's just a study of fluid dynamics. So
Mm,
if something swells and expands in one area of the body, or shrinks and contracts, it once we're always taking the pulse in the exact same place, it turns out that it affects the pulse in very pretty predictable ways, which is, it sounds really mysterious, I think, until you think about it that way. And so
yeah.
it's not an exact science. It's not like doing an MRI or CT and like knowing for absolute certain, but just like, taking the symptom out of context, like, your lungs are fine, sure. You try to match any pulse taking or tongue reading or symptoms all together. You're pairing everything together. So you're looking for big trends. So you might get some red herrings or whatever if you take the pulse or just look at the tongue. So you match everything up.
Yeah. So bottom line is, like, your body is this amazing, fascinating machine. And
I think so.
yeah, agreed. All right. So my last question for you, that I ask everybody, because I have a personal fascination with morning routines and I love hearing about different ones. What is your morning routine?
My morning routine, our alarm goes off at about 6. We're both out of bed by 6:30. I shower. I go downstairs. I make coffee. And that's the first thing after the shower is the coffee.
Yep.
Big coffee fan. Used to be a big tea drinker until I started getting some kidney stones, I think from the oxalates in the tea. So I switched over to coffee. It seems to work a little better for me, but I still love tea. And then breakfast. And I'm a healthcare provider first, but I'm also a business owner. So I my brain is the sharpest in the morning. So
Yep.
I'll try to do all of the just, kind of boring business running things, my Instagram posts and whatever, kind of in the morning. And I'm more in this space for like meditation or slowing down, kind of like late afternoon. So if it's a day and I'm
Mm,
not at work, I like to do that kind of stuff then. So yeah, for me, in the mornings, I am just like chomping at the bit, ready to get some stuff done. Even on the weekends, like I can't sleep in. I lost the ability to do that years
Same.
ago. So I just get up and start doing stuff. That's what I'm like. Yes.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. Hence why our interview is in the morning, because that's when my brain is the sharpest. And so, yeah, I totally agree. And if people can kind of understand that about themselves and the periods of their day when they're most productive or least productive, like I try and kind of leave like the tasky, check the boxes that doesn't take a lot of brain power kind of for mid afternoon, and then later afternoon, I'm just kind of like, I'm ready to go home and read. So I totally get how that works for sure.
But coffee is important and breakfast is super important. If I miss breakfast, it's going to be a scene. I need
Here, yeah. What's your favorite breakfast these days?
We rotate. Some days it's like I like kite hill yogurt. I've mentioned that I'm lactose intolerant, so if I say yogurt and granola, people are going to be like, "What?" But we do that sometimes, or eggs. My husband makes some mean scrambled eggs, little piece of toast, some fresh fruit or something. I try to, as I'm sure you're aware, you've listened to me spiel about this. I try to not eat cold food in the winter.
Yeah.
So the yogurt is more of a summertime thing for us. What else do we, sometimes it'll just be like a little piece of toast or something, or sometimes like eggs and sausage. It's all over the place, and just literally whatever I'm in the mood for. It's nice.
Yeah, I love that. Well, thank you so much for coming on today. This is such an eye-opening conversation. And before we sign off, where can people find you?
Oh, sure. So if you just type in centeredrichmond.com, it'll take you to the website. I'm on Instagram. I think my handle is Centered Richmond Acu, I think.
It is.
Just that I don't know that. I post on it all the time, but there's a link to it on the webpage. Basically, if you go to the webpage, you can find everything you want. I post free videos on Instagram probably about once a week lately. So if you're just in for some free health tips, you want to just learn a little bit more about yourself, you can follow me on Insta. And otherwise, we do free consults. So if you have a health problem and you're just kind of curious to hear about what it would take to get you feeling better, you can schedule those on the website.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I know so many people are going to be looking you up, and if they haven't tried acupuncture in the past, then hopefully you are considering it, because it is just another tool in your toolbox that you can do to be feeling your best self. So really appreciate all the wisdom, and it's so great to connect, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.
You too.
All right. Bye.